Hey everyone, welcome. We're going to get started here in just a minute. People filtering in. So if you have any questions that you want to kind of jump ahead and drop those in chat, you're welcome to. And we'll see you here in just a second. Here we go. Okay. Hello, everyone. We had probably a record-breaking amount of people register for this office hours, so we're super excited to see you here. If this is your first time, my name is Mitch. This is Mike here. Normally Emma's with you, but we switched it up. Yeah. So I get to hang out with Uncle Mike. Fun fact, not many people know he is technically my uncle. Just throwing that over the wall there. Yeah. So me and Uncle Mike hanging out today. This is office hours. We do it the first Wednesday of every month. And the goal of it is really just to say, we know we put a lot of blogs and YouTube and videos out there, and sometimes people have questions and they need a little bit further help, or they just want to engage a little bit further. And so we put this office hours together as a way to say, come on in, we're opening our door, let's chat and hopefully get you unstuck. So that's what today is for. We stream it to both Teams and YouTube. So those of you on Teams, thanks for registering and being here. If at any time we're like working on a question with you and you want to come off mute, feel free to just raise your hand and we can allow that. Those of you on YouTube, you don't get as lucky. You get to just interface with us via chat there. So yeah, the whole premise here is we don't have an agenda outside of if we got any questions ahead of time and then whatever questions you guys bring us. So we do have one, we do have one question ahead of time, but I think it's from Anna here. And so, yeah, I'll just remind you, if you have any questions, drop them in chat and we'll kind of get to them as we go. So Anna asks, I sent my question several days ago. Yeah, she's trying to implement the help desk template and I want to use my own SharePoint list. I built the list, but I'm having problems connecting the list to the template. Would you help? Yeah, and I think the first part of that question was, it only opens in read-only mode. I can click on override to fix it. Is there any, let's tackle that one first.
Sure.
What's going on there?
Well, so that sounds a lot to me like she maybe has the app open in edit mode in another browser session, or maybe she shared it with another owner and another owner has it open. Maybe they're trying to do something with it or tweak it. If Power Apps senses that multiple people have it open, it's going to basically let the first one in the door win and give you that message, basically saying that somebody else has it open for edit, and you need to either wait for them to close it or, whatever that is. So that's certainly a possibility. If it was you, like if you had it open in multiple browser tabs, sometimes you just need to close them all and give it 30 minutes or an hour or something like that and wait for Power Apps to figure out that you don't have it open anymore. So,
Okay, so that's that part.
Yep.
So override implies that someone else has the thing open or it's open somewhere else. And it's trying to protect you from yourself, basically.
Well, it's protecting you from having multiple people make different changes and not really being on the same page, right? That's one of the trade-offs that you get with no-code, low-code is you don't get necessarily out of the box all of the nice tools that you get with formal app development where you can actually merge code changes and things like that.
Cool. Okay. That covers the first part of her question. I want to get to the second part here in just a second, but we have a message on YouTube saying hello from Tennessee. Hello. That's great. I'd love to know just where people are joining from. Feel free to drop in the chat. We just love to know, where people are finding us and hanging out with us from. So let's go on to the second part. So we have this help desk template that frankly has haunted us a little bit because the intent with the help desk template is to say, hey, look how easy it is to set something up in Power Apps and get something running quickly. And how do we give the steps in order to make that happen quickly? Because some of the value of Power Apps is that things, because they're not based on code and they're based on low code, you can iterate quickly and you can stand something up fast. And so that's sort of the intent with the help desk app. And again, it produces a lot of questions of if something doesn't go quite right, how do I fix it? Most of the time we say, hey, go back to the beginning and go through the steps pay extra attention, and that resolves it. But it also produces this, hey, how do I take it a step further question?
Yeah.
And it's challenging to address these situations where they're saying, hey, yep, I have this set up, but I want to do this another way. How do I do that? And without any proper or formal Power Apps training, it's hard to ride that balance of, hey, you should learn this thing from a principle standpoint if you want to build Power Apps, and I just want to help you get unstuck and solve that one thing. So how would you kind of come at this question
so I think
customizing it?
There's two variations on the question. One is what showed up in Teams that Anna posted, which is I set up a SharePoint list with all the right fields. How do I connect it? Right. So that's probably the first part of the question. The second part of the question was the one that she had kind of sent previously prior to this office hours, which was something like, if I make a change to my SharePoint list after I've connected it, does it automatically refresh in the app? And so key thing that Mitch said is the template itself, that app is designed in a way for you to be able to stand it up and see some basic functionality of a help desk app without actually really connecting it to your systems. So essentially out of the box, it's connected to basically a bunch of dummy data and maybe an Excel file. I don't even think there's an Excel file behind it.
No.
Right. And so you have the options to connect it to whatever your ticketing system might be, right? So you could say, we keep track of our tickets in Excel, or we keep track of our tickets in Dataverse, or a SharePoint list. SharePoint list is often a useful tool because it's no additional license cost, right? It's free, it's there, it's pretty easy to set up and configure. So a SharePoint list is usually kind of a way that we would recommend as a first step of connecting it to something. And I think, Mitch, you said that our video haunts us a little bit. I think
I might take it down.
Yeah. In our video, we tried to walk somebody through connecting it to something else. Is that true? Am I remembering that correctly?
No. Well, the first,
because there was a variation.
There was two videos. The first one was, hey, here's this thing. Here's a bunch of ways that you can go off and customize it, like as an inspiration type video.
Right.
And then mine was, which at that time Microsoft had instructions for how to set it up. They took that down, but we kept getting questions. And so I said, let me go just make a step-by-step, set it up video.
Right.
And so it wasn't any customizations. It was download this thing, set up your list, connect it all, call it good.
Okay. And in that video, we show how to connect the list?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're going to do that, I would still reference that video for how to connect that list.
The problem is that if it's named something different, like there's going to be a bunch of references to help desk list everywhere within the app. And so anytime that you want to reference that list, you either need to change the name of your list to help desk list, or change the reference of it everywhere in the Power App.
Right, right.
So that's like the first step.
Yep. Let me think about, so in terms of renaming everything in your app, that could be relatively easy to go through. I think there may be a video that we did way back about like troubleshooting Power Apps, where we go through and reset a bunch of connections. You look for your red squigglies. You use the app checker to find where all of the code problems.
That might be in your course that you did or something.
Yeah, something like that, right? And so then you could go and seek and destroy all of those misnamed connection references. So that would be one thing as a way to reconnect it or connect it to the proper list, assuming you've got all of the column names and all of the data types and all of that stuff correct, right? So then it should just connect up. In terms of refreshing, like if you add a column to it, your app itself is not going to automatically know what to do with the new column, right? So you're going to have to like tell it what to do. You can go into the data source directly in the Canvas app and refresh the data source, and that will mean that your app will now be aware of the new column. So when it looks at the data source at that list, it'll be like, oh, there's a new column here. I see that. But then you need to decide how to use it in your app. So you need to go through methodically through the screens and decide which forms need to include that new column, for example, which grids need to include that new column. When you save data that's in that column, are you doing something special with it, right? All of those types of things you would have to implement for your app specifically.
Yeah. And do we have any videos about forms? We have the customizing SharePoint forms.
We do.
Would that maybe be a good reference for like configuring? I know it's a little bit different, but
yeah. So I haven't, like, you're more familiar with the Help Desk app than I am.
Yeah.
If you're using like forms proper, like Canvas app forms proper, and they're connected to a SharePoint list, if that's what's actually happening in the Help Desk app.
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think it's the old school, like manual
make it up
connection.
yourself. Yeah. So that's, I would say, because of the way that the template was originated, which was, I don't know what your connection is going to be.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't do it that way. Like one of the things, another way to go about something like this is use the Help Desk app as a guide for user experience, right? Because it's a good place to start. But then build your SharePoint lists with all of the same columns, right? You know the things that you need to track with your new columns and things like that, but then build a new Help Desk app and connect it to your SharePoint list as a starting point, right? And when you do that, what it will do is it will actually bring in forms that are automatically connected to SharePoint, and it will like more or less understand what to do when you submit and all of those types of things, which will make that integration much easier. So one of the things that
let's say, I'll shortcut to the end.
Sure.
There's probably going to require a little bit of upskilling on configuring forms in Power Apps. I don't know that we have an exact example out there that spells it out. We might have supplementary stuff, but I would go out on YouTube, say like build form in Power Apps, and learn a little bit more about the intricacies of how someone connects SharePoint to Power Apps. I wish it was as simple as me saying, oh yeah, go in here and flip this drop down, and like it might be that simple, but I also want to empower you to educate on exactly how it's configured, so that somewhere down the line, if that thing becomes critical, you're going to know how to manipulate it and care for it. So hopefully that does an okay job. We have a bunch of other questions that came in, so feel free to leave a chat if you have any kind of follow-up questions on that. Let's do the one on YouTube quick. Computer Mechanics says, I'm working as a Teams admin. Since I already have the position, what benefit would getting the MS700 Teams admin Microsoft cert be? We have thoughts about certifications.
we do.
We have a podcast about it, about why we're not a Microsoft partner. That might give you some context into certifications. That aside,
Yeah.
how do we feel about it?
Well, so the question is phrased interestingly, right? It implies something like, what's the value of having a certification when I already got the position?
Yeah.
As if the certification was maybe a prerequisite or a important foundation in order to get the position. The positioning of that question leads me to want to talk about our thinking on certifications. They're cool if you care about proving that you know how to check the right boxes and configure certain things. But if you're like, I've never looked for a job that required me to have a certification.
Sure.
And I look at a lot of the technical aspects of these things as like they're like tools like a carpenter might use, right? A hammer, a saw, and so the knowledge to use those tools is like all wrapped up in how much experience you have with the tools and all of those types of things. And the reality is those things change every month, if not more often than that. And so there's always something that you're having to keep up with. And so if you're in this field, if you're a technology consultant, you have a kind of a built-in responsibility to stay up to speed on all of those things. It's kind of a given. Now, if you come into that position and you feel like, oh no, I don't understand what I'm doing, like I got lucky, they gave me this job, that'd be a great place to go cut your teeth and like learn the basics. So you'll know where all of the parts and pieces are.
Benjamin, you're missing an O in Microsoft. he's copying a link over to YouTube. That might help you. Yeah, I think the gist of what we say is like we love it from a learning perspective. Like it will teach you about the tools, and Microsoft stuff is inherently going to be more up to date than like our stuff became out of date because we didn't keep up on it. Like hopefully Microsoft stays up to date, but it doesn't necessarily teach you how to integrate it into your business and use it strategically. And so we saw that as poor proof for the type of work that we do. And so we don't seek out certifications. But if you're looking to upskill, learn a little bit about the tool, 100%, go check it out. I wouldn't view it as some people view it as like a report card, like a proof, like a...
Yeah. Well, and it depends, like the position...
That doesn't do anything for me, but it might for some people.
The job role described as Teams admin, right? That could mean a couple different things. It could mean I'm just, a pixel clicker, and I know where all the parts and pieces are. But it could also mean I'm responsible for the governance strategy of Teams and how we use it at the organization, and I'm included in those conversations, right? Which all of that stuff you're not necessarily going to get out of that certification.
Yeah. At least historically speaking, it didn't lean that way. Thanks for the question. Appreciate that. Christina from the Trinidad. Christina, I'm going on a cruise in a few weeks here. I'm not going to quite get that far south, but I'll wave in your direction. I'm super excited about it. She asks, Dataverse versus SharePoint. I've started building most of my apps in Dataverse, and however, I'd like to know your views on both. What perfect timing.
So I was just going to say this is a very timely question. I just got done writing a blog article, and we did a little video that's going to be coming out soon.
Do we know? Let's ask Benjamin to look up when to expect that. But yeah, it's definitely in the works. A well-articulated perspective on it. But give her the preview.
Yeah. So basically, I kind of try to walk you through 5 of what I think are the most important or key things that you should consider when you're making a decision about whether or not to use SharePoint or Dataverse as the back end or the data set, data store, data repository for your application. And so, those that ranges from things like the complexity of the security model that you need to the time it takes you to build it, to things like licensing costs and how you should be thinking about that. And all of those types of things are there. So in her question, what did she say that she usually does Dataverse first or SharePoint first?
She didn't say.
Okay,
I've started building most of my apps in Dataverse.
Yeah.
So that's favorable to Mike.
I like that approach. I think one of the things that I talk about or allude to in that video is a little bit of, I've been doing this for 20 years, and back in the day, the only option we had was really SharePoint as far as a cloud-based back-end system. And Microsoft would even push SharePoint as the end-all, be-all solution or platform to put all of your business apps on top of. And that gave a lot of us consultants kind of a bad taste in our mouth for SharePoint, and we just didn't like that way of, selling Microsoft licensing. And so there was a lot of heartburn over SharePoint for a long time. And at that time, it was SharePoint Classic too. So the UI and the admin experience just sucked. But now modern SharePoint in the cloud is a much better user experience. And so you might say, well, why not build my apps on SharePoint? And the reality is there's a number of reasons. You can still do it on SharePoint if that's critical. But the minute that you get into complex data models where you're relating multiple lists or you have like a many-to-many relationship, that's a good reason to think about something else. If you're worried about overall cost of ownership and managing the application because it's core to your business and you need to worry about dev, test, prod, and all of those types of things, so ALM or application lifecycle management, that's a good reason to choose Dataverse. There are more tools that are geared specifically for that than are available on the SharePoint side of things. So there's a number of things there. I love Dataverse simply from a time to build standpoint. That's my favorite thing about it. The way that my brain works is very relational data model driven. That was one of my favorite courses in college. And so that's just how my brain works. And I can put data models together like nobody's business. And that's not an easy thing to do in SharePoint, but in Dataverse, you can do that. You can relate tables and do all kinds of cool stuff and then build your app on top of that. And it's like, literally, I can stand it up in a couple days kind of a thing.
I think from a features perspective, it's obvious. From a practicality perspective, if someone doesn't have Dataverse, there's an extra hurdle for someone. Like they might have to go ask somebody to enable it, or
right. Yep.
Is this worth paying for?
Right.
Can I just make this proof of concept with SharePoint instead?
Right.
All those questions come up. So I think it comes down to if you hope for the life of this thing to be beyond a proof of concept and it's slightly complex data model,
yeah,
Dataverse is the winner.
And there's some in-betweens. There's a Dataverse for Teams version. It's not fully featured Dataverse, but it'll get you the relational data model. And so there's some in-betweens there that you can get there without paying for the licensing and things like that. But, I mean, if you look at the cost of licensing and the apps that you're building are useful to your organization and they either save you money or help drive revenue, you can usually pretty easily make a case for a relatively small additional license cost.
We've got some Dataverse fans in the chat. Michaela's chiming in. She's one of our team members. She goes hard on Dataverse and does a great job. So Mike and her, I swear I walk into the office and they're two just talking about Power Apps all the time and Dataverse and all that. Yeah.
Does that annoy you?
I declined to comment. Benjamin, when are we going to see Mike's video on YouTube?
It could happen. It's happening this month.
This month. Okay.
This week's video is podcast. Next week's video is about Copilot.
Mm-hmm.
And the week after could be Dataverse versus SharePoint.
All right. We'll pencil it in for about 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks
okay.
from now. Yep.
Don't hold your breath, but it'll be coming. Thanks, Benjamin. Okay, we have a couple other questions. I do want to pause really quick, though, and just say, set the stage for someone that might be joining us here new and weren't here at the beginning. This is Office Hours. We open our doors to share any insights or answer any questions that might be stumping people in kind of the Microsoft 365 space. A lot of the times we get relatively technical questions, but I do want to say it's 100% fine if it's not a technical question and it's more of a high level strategy or getting started. Just there's no wrong questions, no stupid questions here. So feel free to drop those in chat. Resource I want to leave out for people and just get in here quick is if you value sort of this community and being alongside other people that are working on these things, we actually have been piloting a community called The Workplace where you can basically join, be a member, and for a year you get access to basically a forum type interaction with us, and we can help get you unstuck on a more regular basis than this once a month thing. So Benjamin, you want to pop up that graphic just to give people a place to go?
Yes.
we'll leave a thing in chat, or Livy will drop something in chat too. But just wanted to share that resource. Kind of, there she goes. She's great in the middle here. Let's go on to I think it's Samantha Thompson. Asks, I'm curious about best practices for shared meeting agendas and notes/action items for cross-departmental standing reoccurring meetings. The notes within a Teams meeting have been a bit clunky for reoccurring meetings because it doesn't refresh for each instance. but we may not be using them correctly? Or can we utilize Loop to house the meeting agendas and notes/action items? If only Emma was here. I'll try to answer this one based on my understanding. The reoccurring thing has been something that has come up and been part of our feedback to the Loop team, because we have similar struggles of we just want something that works well for reoccurring meetings. What I think we have ended up doing, sorry, Emma, if this is wrong, is when you create the meeting in Teams, or you're in the meeting and you say like create notes, you're able to transfer that to a workspace after the fact. And I think that's what we're doing every time that we have a meeting. It has not been something that we have like evangelized at all because we're not super thrilled with it, but it works for the moment, and we'd love to see some improvements there. And we'll kind of double click on that one with Microsoft. But I believe the solution today is creating it in the context of a Teams meeting and then basically copying it out or moving it into a workspace afterwards that can be alongside. There, Matt Dressel, he loves to cameo in these things. Even though he's not in front of the camera, he is delivering value, and we love him so much. And he will love so much that we're pointing it out right now, and he loves recognition. Not in the slightest. So we're just going to sit on that for a moment and appreciate Matt Dressel.
Yeah, really appreciate that guy.
He just left a screenshot. Sorry, we can't show it in the YouTube chat, but he kind of showed how you can move that to a workspace and copy it to a work. He's giving us a thumbs down. So again, we're going to take that feedback. I hear your pain and see what they say about it. I know there's also like a struggle with if we have external users in the meeting, like it doesn't quite work the way, like they can't see it all. There's a couple hiccups, but I believe in the future of it. So we'll keep our tabs on that.
My only comment is I don't usually take notes, but when I do, I use Loop.
Or Copilot. You guys, part of my video coming out is about Copilot, and the selling point for us has become notes in Teams meetings. Like if you're familiar with like Otter AI, they were one of the ones kind of before Copilot where they you could invite them to a meeting and it would keep timestamps of when you talked about certain things, and it was kind of like it was kind of helpful. Like it was something that could fill me in on what I missed. But Copilot is worlds better at answering what happened in the meeting. Are there any action items? Basically, making it feel like everything that is important is articulated in the notes. And so I would say, ask, do you need to take notes? Well, you need to take notes, but some people get by taking notes.
Some people may not have Copilot yet.
Yeah,
right.
You should get Copilot.
So it's $30 a user per month, but think about however many people you have that are trying to keep track of notes and then derive action items and owners out of that meeting, right? And if you let Copilot transcribe your meeting, and at the end you can say, give me a list of action items and owners, and it gives it to you accurately, and you didn't have to take notes, like that's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. Cool. So she says, thank you. No problem. Thank you for the question. We're super excited about Loop, and it's starting to make its way into more people's hands. So I anticipate more questions on that. So that's good. Let's see here. We got Matt Dressel is just filling up our chat here. Gosh. If anyone else
have a video coming out about Loop and Planner too.
Yes, I recorded another video. I did a double whammy. Recorded 2 videos back to back. One is about Copilot, and the other, like he said, is about how Planner integrates with Loop, and some of our thoughts on that and how to get started. So
don't let it go to your head.
What go to my head?
The double whammy.
Well, efficiency. That was a win for the day. So Erica has a question. I do want to say, if anyone else I think we're getting kind of towards the end of our questions. Drop them in chat. What are you working on? What can we help with? By the end of the year, where are you trying to be, and what's stopping you from getting there? Let's talk about it. And yeah, good thing. So Erica asks, do you have any examples of an adaptive card with an image and data that you use in Teams? I also am using a link to take them back to my record. My problem is I can't find an image that will work when I start to add my fields, etc.
Yeah.
We do.
I like this question. Do you know of an example we have offhand? Because
Well,
I know of one we
images
had.
are tricky.
Yeah, images are tricky. So I know of, like, I implemented this for one of our clients where we were basically posting an adaptive card in Teams and saying, hey, this happened. Take a look at the image and then, respond, approve, reject, that kind of a thing. And basically the way that was working is the images were getting uploaded from a Canvas app to a SharePoint site, right? So a location inside the cloud, if you will. And then the way that we figured out to put the image in the adaptive card was simply to add the media object, and then you actually have to reference it with the URL. Now, that worked like 50% of the time, and that's the problem that we had with it. And I don't think it's an issue with the adaptive card per se, so much as it's some sort of issue with Teams going out and doing a consistent job of retrieving the image and displaying it inside of the chat. And so because we found that to be relatively inconsistent, we actually adjusted our strategy. And fortunately in that scenario, we had some other apps where we could deliver those images directly to the users who care. So now we use the adaptive card simply as a place to say, hey, the process started. Do you want to own this process and engage in it? And then they say yes, and then they go somewhere else to actually view the media and the other data that comes in with it. And that's actually just a model-driven app in that case. And so we link them to that.
If I remember correctly, I had images working, but I had to take the data of the image, basically decode it into a blob, like a string, and then send it in so that Teams could render it locally instead of have to look it up. But then you are limited dramatically by size.
Well, so that was the first iteration. I forgot that, right? Yeah. Is we basically encoded it so that we could bring it into the memory of Teams and display it natively, right? But if somebody's taking a picture, which is what was going on in this case, the resolution on that image is huge. It's a giant file, actually, and so Teams couldn't do that. And that was an adaptive card limitation, right? The size of the media. So then we pivoted from that to let's upload the image to SharePoint and then reference it with a URL, which is the case that I was talking about that only really worked 50% of the time because Teams wasn't retrieving it reliably.
So what would we say to Erica? What direct? So we've talked about a lot of problems. So what should she do?
So one of the things that she said in her question was that she was including a link to the item.
Yeah.
I would simply say you could attempt to do the image with a URL like we did, and maybe 50% of the time, 75% of the time it works. But your fallback scenario, or maybe the primary use case, would include click the link, go to the item in question, view the image, and then come back to Teams. It all depends on how much of your workflow you actually want to do inside of the Teams client.
Yeah, and Michaela dropping some knowledge in chat. According to info online, adaptive cards have a maximum size of 28 kilobytes. So that is for the entire card, which includes images, which is not a lot.
Yep. So it's not very workable.
It's not what it's for.
It'd be nice if it was for
right,
for that.
But it's not what it was originally like. It was built to use the Teams messaging service, I think, which is built for a message, like a text, not an asset.
Yep. The other thing that is interesting here, which may or may not be a concern, is something like when you start to put, because you could put a link directly to the image, right? So let's say it's a PNG file or a JPEG. You could put a link.
It has to be hosted somewhere.
Yep. It has to be hosted somewhere, let's say SharePoint, right? You could put a link to that image, and they could actually go click on that image and see it directly, right? Without having to go through some other layer like a model-driven app or a Canvas app with a deep link or SharePoint, right? You could take them directly to that thing. But you may want to consider things like, is the laptop or the workstation that the user is using owned and managed by the organization? Because when they click that link to that image, for example, it's going to download it directly to their machine, and they're going to have a copy of it that's then going to be maybe outside of your control. So those are some other things to consider as you're building your apps.
So sorry, it's not, no magic bullet here. Sounds like, yeah, she said, I'll just stick to data and drop the image. Hopefully they improve that. But for now, that's what we got. Another good question from, I think this is still Samantha. For whatever reason, she shows up as unknown user in the chat for me, but I can see it in the meeting. She says, I've been delving into your content about Loop a lot this week. Thank you. And see so many uses for it within my organization. How does a Loop workspace or page complement? Yes, it's Samantha again. Cool. How does a Loop workspace or page complement a Teams channel? Should our Loop workspaces be or pages also be topic-based like our Teams channels are? I feel like it could get muddy to know what lives in Teams channel versus Loop. Is the channel where the communication happens and Loop is where the actual work/creation is happening? I love this question. It is because Microsoft built the roster system of Loop to be separate and distinct from Teams and any sort of existing security group that you might have. They created this problem for themselves. I would love to see Loop. I can't remember. I've talked to Microsoft about this, and I can't remember what they've told me versus what I told them. So I'm going to try to be a little bit vague. I would love to see if I'm creating a workspace that I could say communication about this workspace happens in this channel in Teams. That way, they can integrate the two together and show like the channel alongside the Loop or things like that. Because then it makes it a lot less of a question of should one thing be one thing versus the other.
What you're articulating is there needs to be some minimal standard that you could apply, because right now it's like up to whoever wants to do whatever they want to do. To add a tab
it's completely disconnected.
Right.
And so I'd love to see those things get connected. In my opinion, the Teams channel is going to be the place to, for now, communicate about things, and Loop, yes, like you said, is where the actual work and creation is happening. As far as the channel structure goes, well, I'll talk about workspaces first. We have generally found that if we try to do some sort of general overarching workspace to serve multiple purposes, it gets even muddier. And so we have leaned on the side of let's create more workspaces that are more singular purpose focused. And so that has seemed to work well for us because it allows us to control security for those things, but also there's very little question around what is where because it's designated with a workspace in a title.
It's very interesting. The what you're describing is like a natural way that it's falling out for us.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar, or it's a parallel pattern to where Microsoft has said everyone should go in terms of things like flattening SharePoint.
Sure.
Right? It's like it creates a scenarios. It creates scenarios where you can pick pieces of it out and move it elsewhere.
Yeah, we don't want a ton of hierarchy here.
Hierarchy is bad.
The page hierarchy. It's challenging. Like it gets at a whole like data architecture problem. Like in our marketing channel, our marketing workspace, should we have a YouTube, parent node and then a newsletter one, or should we have like there's like so many different ways that you can spin it around. I don't know that anyone is going to give you an answer of this is the way. It's primarily going to be this is what works well for us. So in our case, it's mostly, let me look actually. Why don't we just show this just a second? Let me get where I want to be. Yeah, okay, you can show this.
All right, you're live.
All right. So like this is our marketing. Like this is literally our space. Our current focus, why we do, and then we have like dashboard, campaigns, blogs, newsletter. So it's like, is it exactly like perfect structure? No, but if I'm looking for information about YouTube, I can open up this YouTube one and see our report from YouTube. Should that be under a reports parent instead? I don't know. I wouldn't think too much about it because I feel like that's like the trap that we fall into all the time is perfect being the enemy of good. So I would view this very much as a let's try something, let's see how it works. If people can't find things, or like make it problem driven. Like look for issues that you need to solve instead of saying how do we make this perfect the first time and not have to think about it again.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I would have liked to have the opportunity to have a similar conversation about Teams 3 years ago.
Yeah.
When Teams was relatively new, like Loop is relatively new, and there was very little or almost no enterprise governance strategy possibility for Teams, right? Because that's where Loop is now. Whether or not there needs to be for Loop, I think is debatable because it's a different type of tool.
Right.
But certainly we figured out through the journey of like everyone in the world using Teams that it was needed.
Yeah.
Right. And so I wonder if that ever happens for something like Loop.
There's strategy. We're gonna figure out the strategy and put it in a guidebook to deliver, and then it'll be the source of truth for everybody.
Well, and if it comes from us, it's probably at least halfway decent.
I hope so. If Matt Dressel is involved, it will be. He's back in our chat, you guys. Let me catch up because now they're answering things, and for the YouTube people, I want to bring them along. So Erica asked, what are your feelings on business process flows? Michaela says, Mike and I are currently working on a really cool project in leveraging BPFs in both model-driven apps and Canvas apps. We're really excited about them right now, but I'm sure he'll have more to say.
Yeah. So when the first time I came across business process flows, I honestly was like, what is this? I don't know what to even think about it. And from then on out, everything I built, and this is a couple of years ago, everything I was building was like...
Let me pause. We're talking like deep Power Apps, model-driven app stuff. So don't worry too much if you're not in that world.
So I came across business process flows. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Read a little bit about it. Didn't really understand it. And then I started building things, and customers or clients would ask me, hey, I really want it to work this way, and then it should do this, and then the next step should be that, which is Mitch's responsibility, and then after that it closes out and it's going to do this other thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll build that. And we would go off and we would build it with a variety of tools. In the back of my mind, I always thought, I bet that business process flow is like the intent for this thing, right?
You would like build different permissioned forms that like people would...
Right. And so then
which was painful.
We eventually revisited business process flows because we figured out we had a real great use case for it. And so we employed it. And like, honestly, it's opened my eyes. Like there's so much you can do with it. And the project that Michaela is referencing is like super cool because we're actually taking the business process flow, which is a easily configurable way to define a workflow. And we're employing that not only in the model-driven app side, but in a Canvas app as well. So somebody in the field who's got the app on their mobile device actually is prompted to step through a certain workflow and do specific things at certain stages. And the Canvas app doesn't have to be low-coded itself to know that. It just gets its instruction from the business process flow, which is very, very cool.
They're super proud of that one, and it's complex, but man, it's a doozy. Can
slick.
You explain to me, like I'm 5, what is a business process flow?
So I would simply tell you it's a series of steps.
What does series mean? I'm just kidding.
A series of steps that have to be taken to get from A to B, right? And at each step, there's certain data that gets collected or certain things that have to...
If you have things at your company where you need certain people to do in a certain order, and you want structure around that,
and you're collecting you're collecting data as part of it, you're putting it in an app, it's getting used elsewhere. It's like it's a workflow perspective on an application data set. And you can have 7 different workflows that all work on the same data that do different things for you. It's really, really cool.
Follow up from Erica. So when they answer the questions, do they get a button to advance the BPF that is on the model-driven app?
Yes. Short answer is absolutely yes. So they fill out the form, they click next, and then in this particular case,
Oh, she revised it. Let me make sure. So when they answer the questions on the Canvas app, do they get a button to advance the
Yes.
BPF that's on the model-driven app?
Yep, I understood exactly what you meant. So in this particular case, there's two people involved in the process, somebody who's back at the office, somebody who's in the field, and they're basically handing that process back and forth to each other. The person in the field is collecting data. The person at the office is looking at the data, validating it, making sure it's good, and saying it's good, and then the person in the field is collecting more data in the next step, and so on and so forth.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I think, well, okay. We had a follow-up from Matt Dressel, kind of on my loop, how does it integrate with the Teams channel? And I'll just read it here for YouTube's sake. Loop components are now available in a Teams channel, and those components live in the SharePoint site beside the team. It hasn't been out long enough for me to fully come up with how I think about it, but it's something to look at or think about. Yep, Teams channel components is a thing. If you don't need a whole workspace, or you can just bring a component into your workspace, you could just use things right in Teams. It creates a scenario where you can create, so he's just saying what I just said. I didn't read the rest of his answer, and I realized I was getting ahead. Cool. You can also include a component from a page in a channel post. So it's all kind of coming together. I'm hoping it gets a little tighter than it is, but yeah. All right. So we got a couple more. We have about 15 minutes left. I just wanted to, we're going to drop a link in chat. If we've been helpful to you in this process, it would be so helpful if you kind of give us a shout out. We're going to give you a link, a way to do that. But anytime anyone is wondering, should I show up to this thing? Is this going to be worth my time? Should I reach out with these questions? Like that extra little proof that someone says, oh, yep, they were able to help me could go a long way. So I'm going to drop that in chat. But let's go over to Anna's question about Power Apps. I'll read it here. It says, I really want to understand how to connect a list to a Power App to have a complete working functional Power App. Could you suggest a simple, straightforward use case to build a Power App from scratch?
Yeah, I can. And I've set something up if you want to share my screen, Benjamin.
Just cut over.
Yeah, we can try to kind of walk through this. We'll see how far we get in the time that we have. But I have a simple SharePoint list here. It's called test list. I've got a title, some text, and then basically a choice column that's essentially a drop down that I just added to it. So the easiest way to probably get started, like there are several different doors that you could enter, but probably the easiest one to start with is to use the integrate menu here, and under Power Apps, you're going to have an option to create an app. The other option here that might be useful to you is customize forms, and so what that essentially lets you do is customize the form using the Canvas app tool, so that you can have basically a custom form on the list, right? It's not a full-blown app, it's just a custom form. That's nice because that's the replacement for InfoPath. If you've been around a while, you understand what that is. I'm going to click create an app, and I'm going to call it my test list app, and we'll see where this goes. So the reason this is the easiest way is because this is being driven directly from your list, right? And so it's going to automatically have that connection built into it, and we'll see how much other things you get out of the box in terms of what Power Apps figures out you might want to do with this list right off the bat. We'll just give it a minute here.
In the meantime, I'm going to be posting a poll. We were talking in the office earlier about corn and if it belongs in clam chowder, and it was
chili or tacos
it was
spaghetti.
A thing. So we're going to take a poll. So we want to know what you guys think. This is random, but we like to have fun.
I like corn on the cob. That's my favorite.
Okay. Continue.
Mexican street corn is also good. Okay. So this popped up. This is a pretty simple app. You're going to get, basically it figured out that there's going to be three basic screens. There's a browse screen, which is essentially a gallery or a list of the items. You can see that they're already listed here for you. So it's connected to the SharePoint list. And then we've got a detail screen, which is basically going to give you the details of the item. And so it has title, our foobar text field, and then a my choice field. And then there's an edit screen. So if we play this app just as it is, for example, we'll go back to the, get back to the browse screen.
So silly. I'm sorry. I'm distracting. I just posted the poll.
No worries. And so then the idea is you'd select your item in the list and you'd go to there. And if you wanted to edit, you would click the edit and you could make a change. So we'll pick choice 2 in this particular case, save it, right? And it goes back, right? So that's essentially, that's an app connected to a SharePoint list. So in your previous question, you're like, oh, what happens if I add a column to my SharePoint list? What can I, how do I fix that in my app? Does it happen automatically? So let's go take a look and see what that would look like. So right now, if you look at, let's say, the edit screen, you'll see, I believe, on this form. So it didn't build the form automatically for me. So it will take just a little bit of work here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another column. This time, let's make it, let's say, a number field, because that sounds okay. And we'll call it level. Why I didn't pick a number to start with, I don't know. We'll save that. And so now I've got another column called level on my list. My app doesn't know anything about it. So in order to get the app to know something about it, you would come over here to your data sources. You'll see that you have one called test list, which is that SharePoint list. You can come here and click refresh. And once that's done, it will basically go, oh, you have a new column here. So what do you want to do? You can add that somewhere. So in this case, I'm going to make some room, let's say on my edit screen. So I'm going to shrink this attachments control up a little bit. It doesn't want me to shrink it that way. Actually, I'm going to dump the attachments control altogether because I'm not even using that. And then we're going to add another control. And so this will be, let's say, a text input. And I'll forego the label for now. But essentially, you're going to connect this to, let's see here. Let's take a look at one of these. Oh, yes. I'm doing this the wrong way. Undo, dump this guy. There should be a fields list over here, and we can add a field. Yes, this is the easy way that I was looking for. And so then from here, you should be able to find your field that you added. Level, there it is, and add that, and it shows up there automatically for you. So that's the simple process of I added a column, I needed to get it onto my form. Similar process for adding it to the gallery screen, for example, and to the gallery if you wanted to add another field to this, essentially what's the item template here. This also has fields that you can populate. So if I wanted to swap out, let's say, the subtitle with my level field, right, I could come here and choose that, right, and now it's swapped out. So it all has to do with adding your column first and then coming in here and refreshing your SharePoint data set. Hopefully that was helpful.
Back to you, Mitch. Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Did we get results on our poll yet?
We did. It is a no. We have 3 votes no. Okay, Anna says thank you. No problem at all. So there's a couple people that say yes, mostly no, and then we have one, it depends. So I think we have some news to deliver to people after this. It does not belong in those dishes.
I have a feeling the people that said yes might have been biased.
Let's get to, I think this is our last question that we have listed right now. Peter Rossi asks, question regarding the development of a SharePoint site. Currently, our SharePoint site is contained within one communication site with department pages being set up as subsites. This has been working well so far, and I've been able to enforce permission standards by job role and training employees not to use a single document library as a dumping location. However, I've been thinking about converting the department subsites into individual communication sites / hub sites, linking back to the main communication site. Do you have any tips on how to approach this, or if this would be a recommended direction to pursue with our development of our SharePoint site? And Matt, so lovingly, did give an answer already, and we'll see if we want to add anything to it. Matt says you should 100% move away from subsites and to a flat architecture with a hub site / associated site structure. It's likely to be a bit of a mental shift, and some things will be harder, but it will allow for so much more flexibility and delegation of control. For our customers, we recommend disabling subsites for modern SharePoint sites. That is just how much we think subsites are inferior to the flat architecture.
I agree. I think the only other things I might add would be things like, it sounds like you're fairly happy with the content that you have on your current sites. And so one of the things you might investigate, because there's not a good way to, this is one of the reasons flat architectures are better. You can't pick up a subsite and just move it to become its own site. So you're going to need some sort of migration tool. So if you have sites that have a lot of content, for example, you might want to look at some of the migration tools that are out there. One of the ones that we use a lot is called ShareGate. There's a license cost to it, but if you got a lot of content to move, it can definitely be worth it. So I would look at some stuff like that if you like the content that you have. If you don't like your content and you think it's time to do some sort of like rot analysis or content inventory, I would encourage you to do that, and then only bring over the things that you care about, and leave the old stuff behind.
We find that is usually the way to go for a lot of our customers because there's a lot of old stuff hanging around. So we like to clean that up in the process. But yeah.
And his other note about training individuals so that they're not just letting SharePoint be like a dumping ground for documents. Certainly your communication site should not be that. And so if you're struggling with that, the question I would ask, are you letting them use Teams or team sites as an effective collaboration tool and as a place to work on documents, collaborate on documents, share documents, that type of thing. So if that seems to be like, why are my users dumping all of their Excel files out here, right? Like, or why are they putting everything in OneDrive and sharing everything from OneDrive? You might want to make sure that you're using tools like Teams and SharePoint team sites effectively.
Awesome. We are nearing the end of our time. I do want to leave you all with another resource. We talked a little bit about our membership community earlier called The Workplace. If you are interested in learning more about that, you can head to jointheworkplace.com. It's been a ton of fun to help people kind of in the day-to-day without needing to do a big formal fancy project and see them make progress over time. So go check that out. And then last thing is our internal communication guidebook. So if you hear us talk about some of the things related to how to build a more connected team and make sure that your organization is all rowing together on the same page, we have taken all of the things that we've learned over the years of consulting and boiled it down into the guidebook. Or maybe more appropriately, Matt Dressel, who's been answering all the questions, has transplanted his brain into that book, and we've made it look pretty. And
do you think
cohesive.
that any of his answers today were like AI generated from what's in the guidebook?
We need to give him an easier time. I'm sorry, Matt. Anyway, that communication guidebook is available now. We're super excited about it. I would encourage you to go check that out if you're trying to build a more connected team at your workplace. With that, I'm going to say thank you for being here. We, like I said, do this every first Wednesday of the month. So we'll probably flip the next time and go with Emma and Matt. But we're thankful for you showing up here, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
See ya.